Greetings, nerds. This is Being a Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing this evening?
Doing good. It's been a strange week for me. Strange short week, but I'm good. I'm here.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, it's, those short weeks, sometimes they can go one way or another. They can zip by, or they can just really drag. And for me, it's definitely been the former, whereas it's zipping by. So I'm happy about that.
Oh yeah, I did not say slow in my articulation of this week. This week is certainly just gone by. So has the month of May. I mean,
yeah,
week in May, we're headed into June. Still in this quasi weird situation where we can go out, but it doesn't feel like you can go out yet.
Yeah, you can go out, but you can't go anywhere.
Even though businesses can somewhat be open, but they can, and then it's like, well, I've gone this long without going, so what's the point? And this year is just insane, but
it is. Yeah, it is. But
we've covered that on other shows. What we haven't talked about in a while is Henry Cavill.
No, we haven't. Come to think of it.
I think the last time we brought up Henry Cavill is when I watched his Netflix show, The Witcher.
Yeah, The Witcher, which I still haven't watched in its entirety. But it's on one of those weeks where it's like, okay, when there's like absolutely nothing on, and then I, maybe I'll finish it then, or whenever season 2 comes back, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll catch it then.
Right. Remind me to bring up The Witcher when we talk about Homecoming season 2, because I can actually say some stuff comparison wise. But don't worry, Will, we're still in this quasi quarantine situation. I'm sure the week of nothing on will come. However, it has felt as if this last month has been a month long of random shows and random stuff. But I'm jumping ahead because I did have an excellent segue, and I'm not even correctly segueing into my point. My point is, we haven't talked about Henry Cavill.
Yeah. That's kind of how this month is going. It's just like we have a plan to talk about this, and then we go somewhere else. But let's get back to Henry. What do we know about Henry?
I don't know. What we know is he is in talks to play Superman again. No Man of Steel 2, but showing up in future DC films, which are indefinitely suspended.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, we know it's not Wonder Woman 2 because that one's in the can. And we know it can't be Batman because that would be I think... Well, I mean, I guess they could add him into Batman if Matt Reeves wanted to, but I mean, it would throw off the whole like scheme of where they're going with that film.
It's a brand new decade. That scheme has probably already gone off the rails when they had to close production due to coronavirus.
True.
Who knows how that script will change pre-coronavirus and post.
That's true. Because with all the new rules, I'm sure that will have to get put into place for filming various things moving forward. They're going to definitely have to do either a lot of green screen work or do some rewrites. But yeah, I mean, I guess. But getting back to other future DC films that Superman could possibly show up. Of course, we had that cameo at the end of Shazam. So obviously, when Shazam 2 can finally get into production, that's the one logical film where he could be in, and I guess the maybe the revised Suicide Squad film or Black Adam. Yeah. But I guess basically he's going to become, I've seen a lot of people say this, the Hulk or Nick Fury of the DC universe.
Well, then none of those potential DC films are correct because they started showing up and mainly are featured in the big team-up movies.
Yeah, true. Well, I mean, just basically the...
Oh, I'm sorry, Will. he of course will be featured in the Snyder Cut.
Oh yeah. Gosh, don't get me started with that.
Maybe that's what he talks to. Hey, we're releasing the Snyder Cut, and we promised more footage of specifically you. So will you?
We'll fix your face, since
Right.
they'll just put him in those scenes where his face was all jacked up.
Yeah, I just you lost me when you said logical movie. And I'm like, there's no logic with the DCEU. And forgive me, I haven't seen all the movies. I've heard a lot about them. I've based my opinion on other people's opinion. I've tried and I've failed, but to actually like stay awake during them. But it's very hard. Wonder Woman is the exception, in my opinion, to that rule. But we'll see. He's an interesting actor, He's very similar to Chris Hemsworth, where they keep trying to put him in movie franchises, but it never works. And he is a leading man, but it doesn't. And that's why I think with The Witcher, it was such a breakthrough moment, because there was already this, yes, it could have probably been anybody, but I think with him, he was really able to take that role and do good. I don't know where I'm going with this.
I guess I get your point. I mean, I think with, like, as you mentioned, I think Chris Hemsworth is a great example that you bring up, because they're really where with Hemsworth, I think Thor is that role now that is really definitively his own, and you identify when you think of Thor now. I'm like, oh, I think Chris Hemsworth, and I know he's tried to branch out. I know he had the Netflix action film that he did, and he's tried Men in Black with other franchises, but he is Thor, and I think you're saying the same with The Witcher. Now, when you think Witcher is like it's Henry Cavill, but I could, whereas and potentially and I think they were trying to do this with him as Superman as well, but there's been so many actors who's played that character, and I think, for most people, when they think Superman, they still think Christopher Reeve. And he has.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think he has not nudged him off of that place. But Witcher, I mean, now it's sort of like, oh, I can't really see anyone else playing him. It's definitely, Henry Cavill's signature franchise.
So speaking of The Witcher and Homecoming season 2, because this is one of the shows that in this quarantine quasi post Arrowverse finale week, we found ourselves not only remembering, oh, there were some binges, because there was a while where Arrowverse was completely put on hold. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. And so we're kind of going back, but this weekend we did both take time to watch Homecoming season 2, which structurally is similar to The Witcher. Because the one amazing thing about The Witcher narrative that you don't see coming or you don't understand is that there's multiple timelines. There's no illusion. And then I think it's the third episode. Yes, the third episode where it suddenly dawns on you, oh, none of this is in sequence.
Right.
Great.
Yep.
Now I'm really confused.
Yeah.
Which Homecoming tries to do this. Mm-hmm. And when I sat down and finally dragged my feet to watch season 2, I could not get over how freaking boring it was.
Yes.
Especially since season 1, I remember it dragging and being a really slow burn, but there was multiple people, and that's where I think this season really just did not execute well. And the big flaw is that we mainly followed Jackie or whatever her name is. She doesn't remember her name. I don't remember her name. But we mainly follow her trying to figure out, she wakes up in the middle of the lake in a boat, doesn't remember anything. And so it's all, a lot of it's backtracking, and then it comes full circle. It just, oh my God, I skipped a lot.
Oh, well, so I said, hey, I'm checking out Homecoming 2. And I started it, I guess, either Friday or Saturday last weekend, over the weekend, long weekend. And I made it through the first episode, and I was just kind of like, okay, this is really boring, but it's the first episode. Let me keep going. Made it to episode 2, and then I fell asleep. So I tried it again on Sunday night, but then at the new Rant series on the History Channel, which is great, by the way. If you're a history buff or whatever, it's Leonardo DiCaprio project chronicling Ulysses S. Grant, and I can't recommend it enough, because that's where my TV viewing went the rest of the time, because every time I went back to Homecoming, it just given the first season was very, it was a slow burn, like you said, but it felt like it was going somewhere, and it did have the back and forth in the time periods, and the characters. Walter Cruz was just a very fascinating character, and other supporting characters around him. It made for a very fascinating story. This one was just like, I was trying to figure out, what's the point?
Oh, there's the point. I last night I watched the final 2 episodes, and I will say, out of all of the episodes, they were the ones that held my attention the most.
Okay.
Now, Sam smell still pisses me off.
Yeah, that was, I got frustrated with him. Too.
Oh, yeah.
That was,
and even at the end, you're going to get frustrated with him, because you're just like, really? It took you that long? And this isn't even a long series. We're talking about half-hour episodes.
Yeah.
7 of them. And for whatever reason, I felt like I was watching Batman v Superman. Yes, that is a callback. I'm very proud of. But I could not get through it. And so last night, I told myself, no, I'm committed. I'm going to see how this happens, and I might as well. I got nothing else to do. So, and they really did. And I did appreciate what happened. And your point about Walter is a big player, especially in the ending.
Okay. Because I've made it to episode 5.
Okay.
And so, and when Walter, and I will admit that once Walter started showing up and playing more of a role in the series, I was like, okay, I'm back engaged. And I think part of it is, again, as I said before, his story in the first season was very engaging, very compelling. And so now it's like, and I guess it is that sense of familiarity. Mm-hmm. So I was bought back in, but again, my plan was to finish the last 2 episodes, and I'm totally okay if you spoil it for me. So that we could discuss the twist, because
it's not really a twist.
It
is, but it isn't. It's a trick, and it's not a camera trick or anything. It's a trick where you see this, I think, in the second episode, or whenever Jackie and Temple reunite in present day. Mm-hmm. There's a big celebration going on at Geist. Mm-hmm. Well, what you don't know is Walter has followed Jackie there.
Okay.
And Walter has figured out that this company took away his memories and is a big guy. And so what I'll say in a non-spoilerly fashion is essentially everyone drinks the Kool-Aid.
Okay.
So it's just I guess my point is, it shouldn't take us 5 or 6 episodes to get into a season like this. Mm-hmm. And it also, the overindulgent camera movements,
yes,
the music, the cinematography, if the season had dropped in 2015, I would have been over the moon probably. But
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Sam Esmail, you're not the only creative person on TV anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about you whenever I was watching it too, and given that Esmail is going to do the new Battlestar Galactica series, because when I was watching this show, I felt you're so right. It felt like I felt like I was watching an epilogue of Mr. Robot because of the cinematography and the signature prints, and we know that all directors and creators have those signature moments. I mean, gosh, how many times we blasted J.J. Abrams for the lens flare, but it didn't feel new, and it felt repetitive, and I was like,
Literally.
if I wanted.
Literally. No, I say literally repetitive, and I'm so glad you brought this up because we're repeating ourselves in this whole explanation.
Yeah.
This season committed the biggest sin of it all. They show us everything, and then we have to rewatch it as the character figures it out, and we're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So so that's, again, as I said, I don't really have much more to say about this show. It's if you're a big Sam Esmail fan, you'll probably like it. If you liked Homecoming season 1, go with, I guess my parting thought is just go with it. Go into it with a bit of trepidation, because you're going to fall in one of two ways. You're going to really enjoy what you're seeing, or you're going to come out of it feeling very frustrated.
Well, who are you talking about? Who actually enjoyed this season? I have no idea.
I mean, somebody. Yeah, I mean, well, it was.
No, I get it. I get what you're trying to say. I understand. No worries. It's funny though, because this is an Amazon show, and another random show that we both watched over this past month is another Amazon half-hour show, Upload.
Yeah.
It's very similar, and not similar, but very parallel feelings I have about Upload as I do with Homecoming season 2. Huh. I liked Upload a lot more. Mm-hmm. But it was new. It's the first season.
Yeah.
I really went in with low expectations. I didn't know. And overall, I think it's a solid first season. If you're a big fan of The Good Place, this is your new show.
Exactly.
And this show does very well, ironically, with the relationships of the characters, mm-hmm. with any time that they want to explain social class issues, the father storyline, when that was brought in about how the angel, she is trying to get her father into this virtual reality once he dies. And his belief on what heaven is and what it's not, and that mortality. As soon as they went there, I was sold on this season.
Yeah.
And it was very subtle, and it made me realize that the writers really understand that to be a good comedy, you can't just be laugh out loud funny, like beat after beat after beat. You actually have to have something to say and hit the emotional and hit more about this being a metaphor for something else. It's very similar to science fiction, I would argue. Mm-hmm. So it does that. The humor, though, fell flat. Majority of the time, it was adolescent. It was stupid, and there was no need. It was just a joke for a joke. So it was odd. It's odd to me that this is a comedy sitcom, but it doesn't deliver on the comedy as much as it does on the drama.
Yeah, so the show's by showrunner is Greg Daniels, who's well known for The Office, and so it did have like you mentioned, the comedy beats did fall to me like a lot of times. Some of the jokes that sometimes didn't land quite well on The Office, and I get your point there. I overall I found it most of the time I did find them very laugh out loud funny, and it was a very refreshing series to watch. And you're right, I'm a big fan of The Good Place, and so it did take some of those themes from The Good Place in that same kind of vein of bettering yourself to and really casting a good morality play as far as really examining those issues of good versus bad and do-overs and so I really so I got that from the series, but you're right, the storyline with the father was definitely the high point for me of the series. And that philosophical take on what heaven and this and also just how this you hear about the digital shadow, and it was really interesting how they portrayed the digital shadow in this story, as far as like, especially as you're trying to as Robbie Amell's character was trying to reconstruct pieces of his life, and how he kept trying to remember why his best friend in the quote when he was alive was freezing him out whenever he was trying to contact him and find out more about what happened with their, I guess, freeware version of this construct that this big corporate entity had created for the afterlife. And so it really really painted a picture as far as like how people may want to present themselves in like social media and then of course those and then whenever we get the what really happened story, really shows that underbelly of like, you have this constructed life of what you think things were, but here's how it actually is. And so I like the way they really wove that into that storyline between Robbie's character and his friend as the season progressed.
Yeah, like I said, this show does great with relationships, and anybody, whether it's the best friend, whether it's Angel, whether it's the ex-girlfriend, who is a very interesting character. And why she's interesting, it's funny. It literally took me to the final frame of the season where I suddenly was like, I like you. You because this show deals a lot with grief and loss, and because she's the one whose boyfriend got murdered, and now she's controlling. And so the more I think about that character, initially she came off as very one-dimensional, but she's actually a very 3D character in the sense that most people, whether they're holding on too. They're still like, well, why this person can't suddenly be gone? What about my life? What do I do now? And so I think we'll see what happens with her in season 2 for sure.
Yeah.
So I think it still is interesting to think, though, how this show would have either worked or flopped if it hadn't been released right in the middle of the quarantine season. Because I do know a lot of people watch this show. A lot of people like this show. I'm not saying that it isn't deserving of any of the praise. It's just really interesting to think about, much like all of the movies that were released in March, and how those numbers, well, a lot of us look at them and say, well, but that was a good movie, so it should have probably done better, and would it have had the world not shut down?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, it's just a crazy thing to think about.
Yeah, it is. You're right about his girlfriend. She really was again, this show, as I really, as you made a good point, it's about relationships and the stages of grief and again just sort of holding up a mirror on things and she definitely was like could easily have been a caricature of vanity and selfishness and stuff because of the things that she was doing, but yeah, you're right. At the end there, she ended up being pretty more complex, and then also just the angel Nora was the character's name. I really liked her character.
That actress, she broke out in this.
Yeah. I mean, she's going to be going places for sure because, I mean, just from her story, as far as as you mentioned before, with her father and the loss, and then her subplot with her whole relationship with Nathan, who's Robbie Amell's character, and how they grew over time, and I don't want to spoil anything for folks who haven't watched it, but there's a very pivotal moment in the series where they have to make a choice, and I just really like the way that they portrayed that, and also just funny, just the funny moments too, where the comedy did land when with the way they take Tinder to the next level in this not too distant future. Was another funny subplot that they had in the story, and again just again painted put the mirror on society and how we handle our virtual lives and real lives, how they get intertwined.
Right, yeah. I know I still associate Robbie Amell with this series, and he is the main character, but I did find that his character, I could argue, especially initially in the first few episodes, only worked because of Nora. Mm-hmm. Because of her. And I think for not only the writers to be able to pull that off, but also the chemistry between those two was pivotal, and I just couldn't get over it. I mean, we've all seen Robbie Amell in a lot of different series, a lot of different movies. He tends to play the same version of the character to an extent, but this was the first time where he really did come up as likable and endearing. Yeah. And we saw that because we saw it through Nora's eyes. Mm-hmm. And what she was seeing and the good of him. And so I think that casting, I shall say, is kind of the magic to why this season worked the way it did.
Completely agree.
Speaking about good chemistry and things working, Run did air its final episode.
Yeah.
I watched it. Run.
Yeah. Oh.
Will, I will let you go first.
Okay, so as we were just noting about chemistry between actors, there was basically the only thing that kept me coming back to this series was the chemistry between Domhnall Gleeson and Merritt Wever. Yeah. I mean, because the story was just like, what the fuck?
It literally went off the rails.
It did.
Literally.
Just to reset, because we haven't talked about this show. We talked about it, I guess, the first 2 episodes, and then first 3, yeah, and then that's right, the first 3, and then and then it went off the rails. So basically, we have 2 college sweethearts who break up, and they had an agreement that if the other one ever texted the word run, then the other one would respond back, and then they would do this trip to, and then at the end they would decide whether to continue or break it off. So that's the premise essentially of the show. So they were on a train, and not Snowpiercer, but an Amtrak, and yeah, and it just went, through many different adventures and whatnot, and it was progressing pretty well until, I guess,
the fourth episode.
So yeah.
And that's why I remember the last time we talked about it was episode 3, is because that was the best episode of the season, in my opinion. And it literally took a nosedive so quickly after that. And I'm still trying to figure out why. I'm still trying to figure out what happened, what changed in that writer's room where they had a really good story going. And it's not that the fourth episode sucked. It just started to detour and be about not this relationship, not this history, not this agreement, or the lies that these two are telling each other and themselves. But it turned into it took a detour into a quote unquote adventure movie with a murder plot.
Yeah.
And then it kind of circled back and being like, no, that's not what this is about. This isn't, these are two people with a very complicated dynamic, and they really have to, she needs to figure out if she's going to go back to her family or stay with him.
Yeah.
And you felt that in that final episode, but the big sin of it all is the last 5 minutes of the finale.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't get over it. I'm just thinking to myself, what the heck was that? There's supposedly going to be a season 2. And in a way, I don't want there to be a season 2 because I could care less. But there's another way where I'm like, no, I need closure. I need to understand this is nothing. This is not an ending, Will. This is not an ending.
No, it's not an ending. It's not an ending. Spoilers ahead. So if you haven't watched the end of it, let's fast forward to our next topic. But let's talk about that ending. So, so we go through this weird murder mystery course in the middle. I guess Minnesota or Wisconsin, somewhere in the Midwest, and they get the detour. Fiona, who was Billy's assistant, is pissed off at Billy because Billy just drained all the accounts, and I guess I don't know if their relationship was one too that was like, is it romantic? Is it business? Is it a mix? And it diverged into this murder mystery. And then we get to episode 7 and they manage to get on the train again and things are going great. And then we get the Billy's video where he basically pitches the idea to Fiona about using Run as a story to sell books, and Ruby gets the video, and sees it, and then but before that, Billy just spills his guts of love and everything to her, and then we get to the 5 minutes at the end, and it's like, she's pissed off at him about this video, but then at the same time, I mean, this whole cross-country trip shows her how her life is just a wreck. And
it's not a wreck.
Well, a wreck as far as her marriage, it's a sham of a marriage of I mean, she has 2 loving kids. Well, and the father uses the kids to manipulate her, throughout this trip. And I mean, one kid does get hurt, break an arm, but clearly he was doing a lot of this stuff before, before this all happened. Yeah. And so, I mean, Billy, he made that video. Yes, he did. But,
Well, I mean, you're just experiencing exactly what she's experiencing, where it's kind of like, here, I have my family, I have stability, I have a man but now I realize I made myself fit into what he thought a wife should be and who I am, which is wrong and a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find myself on this train with the next lover who sees me. And that's the one thing about the relationship and a consistency I really enjoyed was Billy's the first one to tell her when she's lying.
Yeah.
Or when it's like, no, you're not a little girl. Grow up, make big decisions.
Yep.
That's not you. And she likes that. I think she likes how she is when she is with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she does. It's, clearly, I mean,
sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say her Ruby becomes alive when she's around him.
Right. She becomes who she is and who she's always wanted to be. And meanwhile, and he's the same way. He actually, they both call each other out on their BS and everything. The issue is Billy also, he never came clean about a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And
it was those secrets, and even though he tried, it's complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the hard thing about this show is that after that third episode, and when I really thought they hit the nail on the hammer, and it was like great, they moved off into this adventure thing when this show works so well because of their chemistry, because of that complicated messiness and everything. I mean, run can stand for a metaphor for so many different things. Yes, you're running away together, but you're also running from yourself and who you were when you were not with this person. So it's just, hopefully there is a season 2 so we can get some better closure so that they can do some redeeming of not only Billy, but over the show in general. Because I think there is a lot of good. It didn't go completely. I didn't stop watching, obviously, but it definitely became much more like, I can't wait for Sunday to, oh, it's Sunday. Oh yeah, that's right. Run just dropped.
Right. Yeah. 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 Same. I mean, it went from like, after like that third episode, I was at that place where I was like, oh, I can't wait. And then episode 4 happened. But I guess the thing is, so with that ending, I mean, Billy's clearly going to be, the cops are on his tail, and we do have the, so they'll have to deal with that. And I guess the thing is, with all the lies and stuff, it was almost like Ruby's made a choice where she's like, okay, Billy, as you noted, both of them call each other out on their BS. And I guess at the end of the day, she was like, do I just go with the devil I know versus the devil? Which devil? I know both devils. Billy's the devil that I just don't know. She can't take him at face value because she'll always have that doubt about whether or not he's really telling her the truth or he is just selling her something because as Billy the motivational speaker, versus her husband, she knows what she has there, and so she maybe she can make better peace with herself knowing what she knows, and yes, it's hollow and she went there because she wants her kids. It has nothing to do, and I think that based on that last line she says to her husband, I think that they are headed for a divorce. He knows she cheated, but the thing is she also has to look out for her children and custody rights. So if she goes with Billy, well, she can kiss maybe custody or any chance of seeing her kids goodbye. So I think she's in an awkward situation. But the way they leave it, they make you think all hope is lost for Billy. But a part of me is also suspicious that there's a way out for him too. And
and it's really Ruby who will figure that out or something, because I don't know. I think we've talked enough about Run,
Yeah.
And broken it down, and people can have their thoughts about it. But it's again, I just need a season 2 because I'm a person who likes closure, and
Yep.
that was not a finale in my opinion. That's not how you end something. Or it is, because clearly I want a second season. So
Yeah, exactly.
Moving on to our current weekly DC TV show, Stargirl aired its second episode. From what I hear, the viewers are staying strong.
Yeah.
Great. This episode wasn't bad. I liked it a bit more than I did the pilot. And what I really took away from this is, thank God this series has Luke Wilson. Thank God.
Yeah, he is the MVP. He's the MVP, Luke, because I like this episode a lot as well. It definitely, they're definitely setting up the clear, Pat, Courtney partnership, sidekick relationship. Again, it's this show is what it is. I mean, it's at least to date, it's very safe. If you're looking for something that's going to be more inventive, I don't know if this is going to be your show.
No, it's not.
but it's comfortable. But it is finding its voice as far as what it's planning on doing. And I think the best part of the episode for me that really reflected that was the montage scene of Pat with the workout and Courtney when she was making her new costume.
Wait, what did that reflect?
Just the voice, as far as how these two characters are kind of mirror images of each other. Just one's a grown man, another is a teenager, but they both have a persistence about them. I mean, for example, Pat learning about Our Man, his research, going to the Blue Valley to find out. He learned that Brainwave had relocated there, and some other parts of the Injustice League was establishing something there. And Courtney and her persistence as far as trying to learn more about Starman and learning more about being a hero. And so those kind of beats, and then just how they're working to working on something and working towards something. With Pat realizing he needs, he was like he goes to the gym, and then Courtney building the suit, and also him building Stripe. Just those kind of things I thought were parts of where I was learning about these characters in this episode.
Yeah, I guess those were some of my least favorite parts.
Okay.
And it's because I've seen it before. I've seen those kind of montages. It's so cliche. It's so kiddie, like kid friendly, or it's just it bothered me. But what I liked was actually Pat's whole situation. He's the stepdad. He's not the evil stepdad, but he's still the stepdad. Yeah. He's the sidekick. He's not the bad sidekick who goes evil. He's the good sidekick who's always there. And there's something very mysterious about Pat.
Mm-hmm.
It's why Starman? Why did he get involved with this? Why, after 2 years, is he still involved with this, even though now he does have a family? Who did he hook up with before? Did he have an ex-wife with his son? Because I'm assuming that's his son.
It is. Yep.
Okay. So there's a lot of mystery, mm-hmm. and I like this idea of I think this show is doing really good, the father-daughter dynamic. And this, because to a way, I'm sorry, Will, you're a father of a daughter. Get used to this. Fathers are their daughter's sidekicks.
Yep.
And you're just you have to take you take the shopping bags when we go shopping. You have to just wait on us hand and foot. We are the princesses. And so it's funny how he very much is used to that role. But now that it's his stepdaughter who's in danger, putting on a costume, he's kind of like, whoa, wait, I'm the parent. I'm not the sidekick. Mm-hmm. I know you can do this. I want to support you, but I'm also, this is very, very wrong. This is not the way it should be, but I get it. But so I and they started going into that. I like that.
Yeah, I like that too.
Courtney just, I don't know. She doesn't work for me. So annoying.
Is it just the way that Breck is playing her, or is it just
I don't think it's the actress. I think it's more there's no flaw with her. This is an interesting character because there's some complexity. She finds she doesn't like her stepdad because she's afraid her stepdad is replacing her real dad, even though she doesn't know where her real dad is. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then she finds a staff. Suddenly she's a superhero just because she grew up doing gymnastics. Still don't understand that. And so what is it? What are we rooting for with her?
Right.
Like, she's gonna bring justice. Well, okay, that's great. Like everything, she is given everything. We're not seeing her put in, and they tried to do it towards the end with Pat going and trying to sacrifice himself, and then her coming in, but still, they didn't allow her to really. Because at the end, with their final conversation, I still don't think she realizes the gravity of this situation.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I see what you're saying, and I get that. And I know that. And whenever we first heard about this series, it was a concern. And you're right. I mean, she really. There is an absence right now of a motivation for why we should root for this character. Mm-hmm. I mean, with all with most superheroes, that there is a trope, and there is that loss that or something happened that will calls us to realize what's their motivation factor for doing what they're doing. And
revenge, vendetta.
Yeah, revenge, sense, justice, whatever, fill in the blank. And I feel at this point of this show, she's basically, we've had this cosmic staff has chosen her for some odd reason. And maybe that's part of what they'll develop over the course of the first season, is to show what was special about her that enabled her to be the chosen one, to be the next one to wield this staff.
Right, but I also think what I'm trying to say is nothing is hard for her.
No, it's not.
And that's where I get bored and I don't care. There's a lot of stuff, and they really made that clear in this episode, that is hard for Pat and makes him very much put in a new and refreshing situation for viewers, but a very complicated one for the character, given the roles. Now he has two roles in the life of this girl for his family. So I again, slow building. I'm sure we'll get there. One thing I really liked about this episode, I don't know why, it's probably because of the music, but shout out to Ben Bateman from the Schmodown. They played a song. I was like, oh, wait, it's Ben Bateman. He's the Iceman. Okay. And I really hope, Will. I really hope, because you have successfully made me believe that Starman is not her dad. And if it turns out that it is, I will not watch this show again. But please, for the love of God, please make it Jordan, her dad, at the end. Because when we saw his face, I was thinking about it. I'm like, he could be in that picture. He very similar jaw structure going on, and I think that would be interesting. That's something we haven't really seen from this lineup of shows, or at least they haven't explored it correctly. And plus, now you have the stepman who's a sidekick, quote unquote hero, partner in crime. You have the real father, the villain in Justice Society. So that would make Courtney, it's not that it would make things harder for her, but she would become very much more three-dimensional than she currently is. Yeah.
I think you may have solved the riddle there, Sarah. I think if again, this is an adaptation, they'll be free to take liberties with certain things like that. For example, they did drop Ted Knight, who was the actual Starman in the comics, instead of Sylvester, who was the Star Spangled Kid. And this would be a way they could do it, because in the comics, it was not a hero who was her father. It was someone who was indeed a bad guy. So I think that would be a great way to mix it up, as you said, in this TV universe that we're familiar with.
Oh, so much TV, mixing it up left and right. Well, on that note, I think that's it for us tonight. Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will and Polk, WILLMPOLK.
On Twitter, at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, but most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.